Now we have someone as our speaker spark. She has facilitated numerous art and healing programs, working with groups and individuals from all walks of life, from corporate executives to people struggling, and a full range of age groups from school children to senior citizens. She has a degree in journalism, public relations, and certifications as both a restorative arts facilitator and grief support specialist. She has spent most of her career in corporate roles. Let's see, her professional life has been supplemented with sharing her soul's passion for art and transformation with community organization. So last fall, she was presented with an opportunity to open an art studio in a learning and wellness center. And she'll talk about that a little bit today. She opened Blooming Peace Studio, and it's art for well-being. It's a creative expression. And she wants you to know that it's the process of creating that she's going to talk about. Please welcome Daune Marie.
Thank you for the honor and privilege to be here today. Anytime I'm given the opportunity to step outside my comfort zone into the spiritual growth zone, I see it as a blessing from the divine, and I'm just to be the vessel. My hope is that my words today can be an encouraging blessing in some small way to all of you as well. Before I begin, how many of you loved to color as a kid? Do you remember the dot-to-dot pages? My story is not only about my childhood passion for coloring, but also about how over time I connected the dots of my life experiences with the divine to understand my life's purpose. There are a lot of famous quotes about art, and the one that resonates the strongest with me is by Van Gogh. He says, "Art is to console those who are broken by life. If you truly love nature, you will find beauty everywhere." He also said, "There's nothing more truly artistic than to love people, and that art and love are deeply intertwined." In 2008, I was living in Center City. I was out walking my dog, looking at the sky, saying, "God, tell me what to do." I had been doing that for months. But on this particular day, a woman came up to me and asked, "Did you make it home okay yesterday?" I said, stopped and said, "What?" She goes, "Did you make it home okay yesterday in the storm?" And I thought about, yesterday, like about the same time. And I remember the winds were picking up and there was about to pour huge raindrops. And I said, yeah, and I thanked her. And I don't recall in the next minutes what I said, or I must have shared something about the personal storm I was dealing with and my soul's desire. But within minutes, she told me about an opportunity to start an art for therapy program at Broad Street Ministry across from the Kimmel Center. She said it had been offered to her the day before. She couldn't do it. She worked at the art museum, and she gave me the name of the person I needed to contact. It felt like a divine intervention. Before I share what happened next, I want to give you a glimpse into my childhood, where I lived, and from my life, and what I learned from life experiences and the energetic environment influences at that point. I was born a creative spirit with a natural need to express myself artistically and creatively, which only grew stronger. We moved a couple of times, but we never lived near relatives. I grew up in small towns in Western Pennsylvania, but my favorite memories were on my grandparents' dairy farm upstate in Potter County. It's also known as God's Country. I went to high school and college in Almost Heaven, West Virginia. And I jumped at the chance when I got offered a job in Philadelphia at a college because I felt the energy. I don't know anyone on this side of the state, but I felt the area had good energy in its bones because of the Quakers that I'd learned about in grade school and their way of being, because it spoke volumes to who I was as a person. In my youth, I was both at home and at school, I was peacemaker. So I never lacked clothes on my back or food in my belly, but I was nurtured in an environment with poor communicators who lived with their own pain from unresolved trauma. It affected me in ways as an adult that I'll only explain as I got diagnosed with CPTSD. It undoubtedly influenced a lot of the life choices I made, both good and bad, but it's got me where I am today. As a child, my father took my coloring book away from me because he said I was doing it wrong. This denial of self-expression is only one tiny example of the painful creative soul injuries that I endured because of someone else's limited beliefs or their own pain. I wasn't coloring outside the lines. I was enhancing all the clothes with flowers and stripes and plaids and patterns based on my mother's art, which was sewing. She made all my clothes that I wore. She was aesthetic by nature, like I am. She would buy fabric off the bolt just because the color and design or texture moved her. So with no coloring book, I moved my art making outside. And I was using sticks and leaves and whatever God and Mother Nature provided for me to make art with. I would scoop mud out of the creek beside my house and pack it onto styrofoam cups to let it dry in the sun to make pottery. This piece here I made 60 years ago by picking wildflowers and stomping on them and scotch taping them to the piece of fabric and using a picture I drew at school to cut a frame out and color it brown. I was intuitively using creative expressions to heal and survive because I learned not to have words for feelings and to disassociate to the point that I didn't even know what a feeling was. When I was exploring college and career options, I was interested in going to school for art therapy, but the adults in my life pushed me into going into computer science. I eventually changed majors and graduated with a degree in journalism and public relations. Before graduation, an article I wrote about a landscape architect building his own home between two rocks and on the side of a cliff was published in Country Magazine. That landed me my first job and launched me into the career where I spent most of my career is in the landscaping industry. It's where I met the man I married and not only started a family with, but 10 years down the road, we created a successful commercial landscaping business that we grew from 6 to 60 employees over the next 2 decades. By 2006, we owned multiple properties and started affording a comfortable lifestyle that we built with sweat equity and had worked hard to achieve. It all sounds great, wonderful, personally rewarding, but it had some unexpected repercussions. Unaware, I had poured every ounce of my being into the roles of being a mother, a wife, and a business partner. My older daughter was away at college and my younger one was almost a teenager. I was anticipating the full effects of empty nest syndrome. I had become so selfless that I felt that literally any moment I was going to vanish and disappear because I would have no self left. After doing a personal growth workshop, I treated myself to a 3-day mini Artista Manifesta Safari that Oprah recommended. We make girls out of women is their mantra. I began painting and making art again. What I could not express with words was showing up as images in my art, and I began healing. We were in the painting studio all day long, and on breaks, we were allowed to go walk around the town that was full of countless galleries and artisan shops. Every day I would go out walk aimlessly, trying to discover something new, but I always ended up in the same place, this little boutique with a French name called, it means joy of life, and I would engage in small talk with the shop owner. On the last day, as hard as I tried not to, I ended up there again. On this day, the store owner's mother was there, and I told her what kept happening. She was in the process of painting a mandala, and she said to me, "It's because you're part of the lost sisterhood." My exploration into what that meant is yet another encounter with the divine, and it's another story for another time, but that's why I wanted to bring it up. Once again, its mysterious and intriguing powers were sustaining me to and encouraging me to continue this creative healing journey of self-discovery. So in 2008, I'm out walking my dog, talking to God, amid figuring out what to do next because of someone else's choices. My life as I known it had been Katrina, as I was calling it. Divorce had never been a word in my vocabulary. But as to be a role model for my two girls, I had recently separated from my husband. I had not given up hope, nor did I want to. But I knew I was on the verge of losing my marriage, my intact family, my home, my business, and my role in it, my everything, or so I thought. I began looking into the art therapy career path that I had abandoned at 17. I didn't meet the master's requirements because I didn't have a degree in art or therapy, but a program to obtain a certificate as a restorative teaching artist came across my computer screen. And that's what I did. And now here I was with my dog in another miraculous encounter with a stranger on the street in the eye of a storm. It ultimately led me to starting the art program at Broad Street Ministry and serving people who live below the poverty line. And it really helped me working with that population with all that I was going through. It just kept things in perspective. And then in 2010, months after my divorce was final, my younger 15-year-old daughter was diagnosed with MDS. It's a rare blood cancer, really rare in children, especially girls. She had come into our lives through my heart, adopted from Guatemala at 4 months old, a Mayan, with health issues related to malnutrition. She was a unique individual with special needs who, on the traditional educational world, was said to have learning differences. But to those of us who really got to truly know her soul, she was an indigo child. Her entire life was full of many challenges as well as exciting, enriching experiences. And I'm honored to say I got to be a mom to the nth degree. In October of 2012, on the same day that Hurricane Sandy hit, I took her to CHOP for a routine follow-up visit. We were driving home and I got the call from the doctors that I had to take her back. They said, turn around, come back, she needs to be admitted. I didn't know this was going to be the last time. We were listening to Delilah on the radio, and Delilah was saying, what's your storm? Perhaps someone in your life has cancer. So in the cancer world, they say through the fight, never give up. It's the same approach that kept me holding on to a marriage far too long that wasn't meant to last. When the doctors told us there was nothing more they could do, I shifted my mindset to whatever it takes, so I could be fully present to prepare to give her back to God. Throughout cancer, I was she was a peaceful warrior. She passed away several weeks after her 18th birthday, and I had been her caregiver through the cancer and was both burnout and curious. I had always been spiritual in my quest to figure out where she went and why this special soul was in my life for such a brief time. My universe expanded. At one point, I thought it was a return to art that had ruined my marriage, but I eventually understood how it had saved my life. Several years after she passed away, I received a book that my late daughter had made. It came in the mail from the therapeutic boarding school that she had been living at when the cancer came out of nowhere. The office staff said they had just found it, but when they opened it, I knew it had been sent to me in accordance with divine timing. It was a quintessential example of art being used to console those who are broken by life and proof that art and love are indeed intertwined. I was at peace because I knew I had not lost my relationship with my daughter. It had just changed form. I started connecting the dots in her life to mine, realizing that through some of her childhood behaviors of praying on her knees in the middle of the backyard and her adoration of the moon and other highly perceptive and extraordinary abilities that just were who she was, and her being in my life had more depth and meaning than my ink signature on the adoption papers. I dove deeper into my own self-healing and became an advocate for self-care and a student and teacher of grief. I founded Blooming Peace, called myself a creative griefologist, and started partnering with community organizations to offer trauma-informed creative healing experiences to help people make peace with loss, change, and passage of all kinds. It became a legacy project. Over the next decade, it was something I was doing on the side to feed my soul while working in corporate jobs in administration and finance to pay the bills. Last year, a medium told me that I was from the angel realm and that I was able to traverse many timelines. It was something that I feel I have validated through my personal work in NET trauma therapy. I strongly relate to the personality traits of those in the Blue Ray Soul group, and I learned they were predecessors to the Indigos. I was told by another medium that my adopted daughter's soul and mine had been together in many lifetimes. What I didn't fully understand was up until this past year that reawakening the creative spirit in me meant I also needed to become more aware of what it meant to be an empath. In other words, I had more layers of the onion to peel, more unresolved mind-body stress patterns that were stuck to let go of because they were being counterproductive to my health. Because of my past and DNA, I have exquisite sensitivity to the suffering of others. My deep well of compassion has at times included self-sacrificing behaviors. I have been close relationship with people who misperceive me as being too trusting or too sensitive, and who saw my kindness and my tears as a sign of weakness rather than a sign of deepness. Mainly, I learned there was such a thing as being too compassionate when I lose sight of self-love and self-protecting boundaries. Last summer, out of respect for myself, with direct guidance from above, I walked away from another entanglement that I had lost myself in. I was seeking a new faith community, and when I Googled the church I was considering, this learning center that came up for art and wellness practitioners, and there's an art gallery in it. And I said, what? This has been in my backyard the whole time? Is this another divine intervention? And it was. The answer is yes. I had an opportunity to open Blooming Peace Studio at White Marsh Learning and Wellness Center in Fort Washington, like it fell from the sky. I knew if I said no, that I would regret it. So I took a leap of faith. I said yes. I quit my corporate job and I opened this space for people to come in and engage in creative expression experiences for well-being and connect with community and themselves. Kindred spirits who I'd never met before started showing up. People that I had crossed paths with back at Broad Street Ministry and in a grief support group showed up, not knowing remembering me or them. And so some of them have become facilitators. I have a website, I have classes and workshops, more being added, and I invite all of you into the studio, however it feels right for you. In closing, I'd like to give you a few key takeaways. We're all born artists because we're human. We all create things in our lives. Regardless of whether we're formally making art or not, we're living as creative spirits, and that can mean a lot of different things. It may mean the need, like I had, to express oneself, or represent having creative inspiration or being creatively inspired. It may come from the universe, God, energy, or spirit guides, the divine, or any other reference of a higher power. Whatever it means to you, it's always been there to connect to. You can't do it wrong. You can only do it your way. Secondly, creativity helps us connect to our subconscious or helps us connect our subconscious and our conscious minds. So we're able to see our thoughts and visions more clearly. When we engage in the process of making art and let go of the outcome and not be attached to it, it allows us to overcome our fears and limitations so we can flow in a creative state. It gives us the ability to fully express our truth and allow space for the divine to co-create alongside us or emerge and be one with us. Next, things don't happen to us, they happen for us. Recognizing yourself as an artist is simply a way of perceiving and being in the world, of paying attention. The most absolute profound works of art are the ones in nature. Look up. Every day there is a new painting in the sky. It's possible to make peace with grief when you look at the world this way. And lastly, the inspiration for blooming peace and planting the seed to start a world of peace and well-being movement through art experiences came from a poem by the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. Condensed into one sentence, it's this: in order for there to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the heart. I believe most of the symptoms of grief, such as loneliness, addiction, stress, anxiety, depression, and I could go on, are a result of unresolved grief, which is really a broken heart. A broken heart that needs to be broken open. Perhaps Marianne Williamson said it best: personal transformation can and does have global effects. As we go, so goes the world. For the world is us. The revolution that will save the world is ultimately a personal one. And before I go, I want to wish you all a happy Groundhog's Day. I lived in Punxsutawney for 5 years. I used to ride my bike to Gobbler's Knob and knock on the groundhog's door. February 2nd falls halfway between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. Groundhog's Day is like the amusing version, the amusing version of an ancient holiday known as Ambolc. Ambolc means in the belly of the mother, because the seeds of it are beginning to stir in the belly of Mother Earth. This day of celebration marks the beginning of a season rather than a midway point. So my question is to you: what are you going to create in this new season of your life? Thank you.